Hey folks, pull up a chair. I've got a story that'll hit you right in the gut, like finding out the pie you've been baking for years was served to someone else. My name's Emily Harper, 31, and for a decade, I poured every ounce of myself into Harper's Hearth, our family's bakery chain in Richmond, Virginia. Imagine the smell of fresh-baked bread wafting through cozy storefronts, blueberry muffins stacked high, and a legacy that began with my great-grandpa's tiny shop on Main Street. I thought I was destined to carry it forward, to make it shine brighter than ever. That's what Dad always promised. But life, well, it's got a way of flipping the recipe on you. I was practically raised in the bakery. Picture a 5-year-old me perched on a stool watching Dad, Michael Harper, shape dough into perfect baguettes. By 8, I was decorating cupcakes, my tongue sticking out as I piped clumsy stars. At 12, I'd spend summers behind the counter, handing out cookies and memorizing customers' names. "Emily," Dad would say, his eyes crinkling, "you've got the Harper touch. This place will be yours someday." Those words were my everything. While other kids fantasized about being astronauts or movie stars, I dreamed of turning Harper's Hearth into a Southern staple, maybe even a national name. I saw our logo on boxes from Charlotte to Atlanta, and our scones in every coffee shop. High school flew by, and college was a straight path. Hospitality management at Virginia Commonwealth with a minor in business. I graduated top of my class, said no to a swanky offer from a DC restaurant group, and walked into Harper's Hearth as a full-time employee the Monday after my cap and gown moment. For 10 years, I lived and breathed that bakery. I'd be there at 3 a.m., checking yeast proofs, and often stayed past 11, tweaking inventory spreadsheets. I knew every worker from Luis, who perfected our brioche, to Sarah, who handled deliveries. I pushed us into new markets, adding artisan flatbreads and keto-friendly desserts that spiked sales by 35%. I built relationships with local orchards for fresh fruit fillings, got us featured in food blogs, and launched an online store that doubled our catering orders. Under my watch as operations manager, our revenue soared, even if Dad still held the CEO title. My personal life? It was like a half-baked loaf, crumbling at the edges. I had a boyfriend in my mid-20s, Tom, but he bailed after I missed his birthday dinner for a last-minute wedding cake order. Another guy, Chris, lasted 6 months before he said I was married to the bakery. My apartment was a pit stop, a 1-bedroom with a couch, a bed, and a fridge that held mostly takeout. Friends like Jenna, my college roommate, stopped inviting me to game nights or weekend hikes because they knew I'd say, "Can't, we're prepping for a festival booth." I skipped Jenna's bachelorette party to seal a deal with a local hotel chain for daily pastry deliveries. Those sacrifices didn't sting too much, though. I was building something bigger, something mine. Every missed happy hour, every lonely night, was a brick in the future Dad had sketched out since I was a kid. Then there was my sister, Lily, 33, 2 years older and a world apart. I was the planner, the one with color-coded schedules. Lily was the dreamer, chasing sunsets and vibes. She spent her 20s drifting through California, snapping photos for art galleries or teaching yoga on beaches. She'd breeze into family holidays with tales of hitchhiking in Big Sur or painting murals in San Francisco. I loved her, don't get me wrong, but we were different breeds. She was Mom's daughter, Susan's mini-me, all flowing skirts and heartfelt hugs. I was Dad's, grounded, focused, and ready to roll up my sleeves. When Lily moved back to Richmond a couple of years ago, fresh off a breakup with a drummer from Portland, I was glad to see her. Mom and Dad were thrilled, acting like their prodigal daughter had returned for good. To everyone's surprise, Lily asked to join the bakery. Dad invented a brand curator role for her, which sounded fancy but meant she worked part-time, maybe 25 hours a week. She'd stage Instagram shots of our eclairs, flirt with customers, and leave by 2 for creative meetings that smelled like coffee shop lounging. I didn't mind at first. Her posts got us trending among millennials, and sales ticked up. Plus, having her around reminded me of when we were kids, sneaking extra frosting from the mixing bowls. Mom revived our Sunday family dinners, and Lily would regale us with stories of eccentric clients, like the guy who wanted a cake shaped like a guitar. I'd sit there, too exhausted from 70-hour weeks to add much, but I loved those moments. They felt like family. Looking back, I missed the red flags, the way Dad and Lily would clam up about business when I entered the room, the closed-door meetings I wasn't invited to, how Mom would pivot to talk about her book club whenever I brought up opening a new location. "Emily, you're always working," she'd say, pouring me more iced tea. "Let's just enjoy dinner." I trusted them, though. I clung to Dad's promise that Harper's Hearth was my destiny. I believed my decade of sweat, of skipping weddings and first dates, mattered. I was so wrong. It was a crisp Friday in early autumn when my world cracked open. I was in the back office hunting for a vendor contract after a mix-up with our almond flour shipment. Lily had insisted on a modernized filing system, which was code for a mess. I was elbow deep in a cabinet marked Private Records, thinking the contract got misplaced. Instead, I pulled out a crisp folder labeled Harper's Hearth Ownership Transfer. My heart did a weird flip, but I figured it was old paperwork, maybe from when Grandpa passed the business to Dad. I opened it, and the date stopped me cold. March of that year, 6 months back. The words blurred as I read, but some phrases cut through like a knife. Hereby transfers 70% ownership to Lily Grace Harper, 30% retained by Michael and Susan Harper. My name wasn't there. Not a mention, not a footnote. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages, searching for a typo, a clause, anything to make this make sense. Nothing. The office felt too small, the lights too bright, and the hum of the fridge too loud. "Emily, are you all right?" Margaret, our lead baker who'd known me since I was in onesies, stood in the doorway. Her eyes flicked to the folder and her face fell, guilt written all over it. "Did you know?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked at her flour-dusted shoes. "Your dad said not to tell," she said softly. "He was going to talk to you when the time was right." 6 months ago was the right time, Margaret, I snapped, my voice shaking. She reached for me, but I pulled back, gripping the folder like it might vanish. "Who else knows?" "The store managers," she admitted, "for signing new leases." The betrayal burned hotter than the ovens. Everyone knew. They'd seen me work myself ragged, knowing Lily, who waltzed in late and left early, owned the place I'd built. I shoved the folder into my bag, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. "Emily, please," Margaret called, but I didn't stop. The drive home was a blur, my hands tight on the wheel. I nearly rear-ended a truck, my mind stuck on Dad's voice. "You're the future, Emily." Lies, all of it. My apartment was dark and sterile, a place I barely lived in. No family photos, no cozy blankets, just a couch and a coffee table. I sank onto it, the folder in my lap, and stared at the blank wall. Who was I without Harper's Hearth? I dialed Jenna, my one constant outside the bakery. "Em, are you crying?" she answered, her voice thick with worry. I hadn't even felt the tears. "They gave it to Lily," I said, the words like ash. 70% behind my back. "No way," Jenna breathed. "I'm 20. Don't move." She showed up, arms around me as I broke down. 10 years, Jenna. I gave them my life." "I know, hun," she said, holding me tight. "I know." As the hours ticked by, anger replaced the shock. If they didn't see my worth, I was done. If Lily owned Harper's Hearth, she could damn well run it. I wasn't their workhorse anymore. Pause for narration. That's where it all began, folks. A decade of my heart, shattered in a single moment. Stick around, because this is just the start of how I clawed my way back. Pause. What would you do if your family betrayed you like that? Tell me, and I'll see you in the next part. All right, folks, buckle up. Last time, I left you with my world turned upside down, the sting of betrayal fresh as a burn. I'm Emily Harper, and after finding out my parents handed 70% of Harper's Hearth, our family bakery chain, to my sister Lily behind my back, I was done being their doormat. Picture me, sitting in my bare apartment, tears drying on my face, deciding that if Lily owned the place, she could run it. This is where things get messy, where I face my family and draw a line in the flour. Grab a coffee because this part's raw, and it's all about standing up when your heart's breaking. That weekend after I found the ownership papers, there was a fog. I barely slept, my mind looping through a decade of promises from Dad, Michael Harper, about how Harper's Hearth was my future. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lily's name on that document, her signature claiming what I'd bled for. Jenna, my best friend, stayed over Friday night, feeding me pizza and rage. "You don't owe them anything," she said, her voice fierce. "Not after this." By Sunday morning, I knew I couldn't avoid the family dinner Mom hosted every week. It was the perfect chance to confront them, to see if they'd own up or keep pretending. My stomach churned like bad dough, but I was ready to lay it all bare. I pulled into my parents' driveway that evening, the familiar ranch house glowing under the soft autumn dusk. The smell of Mom's lasagna hit me as I stepped inside, a comfort that now felt like a trap. Dad was in his recliner, flipping through a baking magazine, his glasses low on his nose. Lily was arranging silverware on the dining table, humming some tune, her auburn hair tied back with a scarf. "Mom," Susan called from the kitchen, "Emily, right on time, come help with the salad." It was so normal, so warm, like nothing had changed. But everything had. My hands shook as I set my purse down, the folder tucked inside like a grenade. "Hey, sis," Lily said, flashing a smile. "Missed you at the shop yesterday. I was going to ask about the new muffin recipe." Her casual tone made my blood boil. Did she really think I'd just keep grinding while she played owner? "Busy," I muttered, dodging her gaze. Dad looked up, waving me over. We landed a big order with the university. Need your magic on the logistics." His words, once a spark of pride, now felt like a slap. They acted like I was still their loyal employee, not someone they'd stabbed in the back. Dinner was torture. I pushed lasagna around my plate, the cheese turning cold as Mom chattered about her garden and Lily rambled about a viral TikTok she made for the bakery. Dad nodded along, praising Lily's innovative flair. I stayed quiet, my pulse loud in my ears. Every bite tasted like betrayal, every laugh a reminder of their secret. Mom kept glancing at me, her brow furrowing. "You're awfully quiet, Emily. Everything okay?" she asked, passing the garlic bread. I gripped my fork, the words I'd rehearsed all weekend clawing to get out. Not yet. I needed the right moment, when they couldn't dodge me. After dessert, a chocolate tart I couldn't stomach, Dad stood stretching. "Gonna catch the game. Lily, swing by my office later to talk about that festival booth." That was it, my cue. "Actually," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside, "I need to talk to everyone. Now." The room froze. Mom's hand hovered over a plate, Lily's smile faded, and Dad sank back into his chair, his jaw tight. "What's this about, Emily?" Mom asked, her voice laced with worry. I reached into my purse and pulled out the folder, placing it on the table with a soft thud. "When were you going to tell me you gave 70% of Harper's Hearth to Lily?" Silence swallowed the room. Dad's face hardened, the look he used on tough suppliers. Mom's hand flew to her chest, her eyes wide. Lily stared at the table, her fingers twisting her napkin. "Where did you get that?" Dad asked, his voice low, like I'd stolen something. "Does it matter?" I shot back. "Were you ever going to tell me, or was I supposed to keep working myself to death for a business my sister owns?" Mom reached for me. "Sweetie, we meant to tell you. We just didn't know how." I pulled my hand away. 6 months ago would have been a good start, Mom. Not after you signed my future away." My voice cracked, but I held their gazes, refusing to let them off the hook. Dad leaned forward, his tone all business. "This was a strategic move, Emily. Lily's got a vision for the brand, a modern touch we need to stay relevant." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "A vision? She works 20 hours a week, Dad. I tripled our revenue. I built relationships with every major client. I stayed up nights perfecting systems that cut waste by 40%. And you think I don't have vision? My words hung heavy, the truth I'd swallowed for years finally spilling out. You're too practical, Dad said, like it was a flaw. The industry's changing. We need fresh ideas, not just hard work. Then teach me, I shouted, slamming my hand on the table, making the glasses rattle. Why didn't you talk to me instead of sneaking behind my back? Mom's eyes welled up. We thought you'd understand. You're so good at the day-to-day, we didn't want to burden you with ownership. Burden? The word cut deeper than the papers. They saw my dedication as a leash, not a legacy. Lily finally spoke, her voice small. I didn't ask for this. Dad came to me and said it was best for the business. I turned on her, my anger a living thing. Don't act innocent, Lily. You signed the papers. You took what I spent 10 years building. That's not fair, Dad snapped. Lily's brought in new customers, expanded our reach. With my systems, I countered. My vendor contracts, my delivery schedules. You rejected my expansion plan 2 years ago, calling it too ambitious. Now it's Lily's genius idea? Dad's silence was deafening, his face confirming I'd hit the mark. I stood, my chair scraping the floor. You took my ideas, gave them to Lily, and handed her the bakery I was promised. I've missed birthdays, relationships, and my own life for this place. And for what? Tears burned my eyes, but I wouldn't let them fall. I'm done. I quit. Mom gasped, her hands trembling. Emily, please, we're family. Family doesn't lie like this, I said, my voice cold. Lily owns it, let her run it. Dad's face reddened. You can't just walk away. We've got the university order, the festival, and quarterly reports due. Sounds like Lily's problem, I said, grabbing my purse and the folder. I'm not working for free anymore. I headed for the door, their voices rising behind me. Emily, wait, Lily called, but I didn't turn back. Mom's sobs followed me out, but I kept moving, my heart pounding like a drum. In my car, I gripped the wheel, shaking so hard I could barely start the engine. Only when I was a few blocks away did I pull over, the tears finally coming. 10 years of my life, gone. The future I'd built, stolen. But beneath the pain, a spark flickered, something like freedom. I'd drawn a line, and there was no going back. Monday morning, my alarm buzzed at 3 a.m., muscle memory from years of early shifts. For a second, I reached for my phone, ready to check bakery emails. Then it hit me. I didn't have to. Not today, maybe not ever. I turned off the alarm and lay there, staring at the ceiling. The usual rush of to-do lists, vendor calls, and production schedules was gone, replaced by a hollow quiet. Without Harper's hearth, who was I? The question scared me more than the betrayal. I pulled on sweats and made coffee, letting it go cold as I sat on my couch. My phone stayed silent. No texts from Dad, no voicemails from Lily begging me to come back. Part of me wanted them to fight for me, to admit they'd screwed up. Another part was relieved to breathe, to think without the bakery's weight on my shoulders. By 8, I called Rachel, a mentor from college who ran a catering company in Norfolk. She'd tried to hire me years ago, but I'd always said no, loyal to the family. Emily Harper, this is a surprise, Rachel answered, her voice warm. Don't tell me Michael finally pushed you too far. I laughed, a brittle sound. You have no idea. Over the next hour, I spilled everything. The ownership transfer, the confrontation, and my resignation. Rachel listened, her gasps and murmurs grounding me. That's unforgivable, she said when I finished. After all you've done, unbelievable. Was I stupid, Rachel? Believing Dad all those years? No, she said firmly. You were devoted. That's not foolish. But devotion deserves respect, and they didn't give you that. So what now? I asked, my voice small. Protect yourself, she said. Document your contributions, every system you built, every client you won. Not to steal anything, but to know your worth for whatever's next. I spent the morning following her advice, typing up a detailed list, every menu overhaul, every supplier deal, every efficiency I'd introduced. I noted the clients I'd personally secured, like the hotel chain and the university, but left out proprietary details, keeping it clean. These were my achievements, not the bakery's. It felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. By noon, I drafted my resignation email, short and professional. I stated I was taking my accrued 5 weeks of vacation, effective immediately per my contract. I'd barely taken a day off in 10 years, so the time had piled up. I set an autoresponder, out of office. For inquiries, contact Lily Harper. Then I powered off my work phone and slid it into a drawer. The act felt final, like closing a book I'd been writing my whole life. The rest of the day was a blur of practical steps. I called my friend Alex, a lawyer, to review my employment contract, ensuring I wasn't breaking any rules. "You're in the clear," he said, scanning the document. "And Em, your resume? It's gold. Any bakery or restaurant would snap you up." His words were a lifeline, a reminder I had value beyond Harper's hearth. I updated my resume, the first time in a decade, and gathered my financial papers, bracing for life without a steady paycheck. That night, I drove to the main bakery after dark, around 9, when I knew it'd be empty. I still had my keys and security code, and I had every right to grab my personal stuff. The shop was quiet, the air heavy with the ghost of yeast and sugar. I packed quickly, a framed certificate from a baking expo, a recipe notebook I'd started in college, and a mug Jenna gave me. I found a photo from our 10th anniversary party, me and Dad smiling, Lily off to the side. We'd looked so united. Was it all a lie? I tucked the photo in my box, not ready to let it go. As I left, I placed my keys on Margaret's desk with a note. "Please forward my final paycheck." Driving home, I felt a strange mix of grief and release. A chapter was over, but maybe a new one was starting, one where I wasn't defined by someone else's choices. Pause for narration. That's where I stood, folks, walking away from the only life I'd known. The road ahead was foggy, but I'd taken my first steps. Pause. Have you ever had to cut ties to save yourself? Share your thoughts, and I'll catch you in the next part, where things get even wilder. Hey there, folks. It's Emily Harper again, picking up where I left off, standing at the edge of a life I'd just torched. After walking out on my family and Harper's Hearth, our Richmond bakery chain, I'd drawn a line, refusing to be the workhorse for a business my sister Lily now owned. That moment of defiance felt like freedom, but let me tell you, the days that followed were a whirlwind of doubt, hope, and a whole lot of soul-searching. Picture me trying to figure out who I am when the oven's off and the orders stop coming. This party's about the quiet that comes after you blow everything up and the sparks that start to light a new path. Settle in, because it's a bumpy ride, and it's going to hit you right in the feels. The first few days after that explosive Sunday dinner were surreal. I'd spent a decade waking up before dawn, my life a rhythm of dough and deadlines. Now, my mornings were empty, the silence in my apartment louder than any bakery mixer. I'd catch myself reaching for my phone to check vendor emails, only to remember I'd cut that cord. The ownership papers, still in their folder on my coffee table, stared at me like a bad dream I couldn't shake. I'd given 10 years to Harper's Hearth, believing it was my legacy, only to learn my parents, Michael and Susan, had handed 70% to Lily, who'd barely clocked a full shift. Quitting felt right in the heat of the moment, but now, I was adrift, wondering if I'd thrown away my identity along with my keys. By Tuesday, I forced myself to move. Sitting still, let the questions creep in. Had I overreacted? Was I worth anything without the bakery? I pulled on sneakers and went for a walk in a park I'd driven past 1,000 times but never explored. The fall leaves were turning, reds and golds crunching underfoot, and for the first time in years, I noticed them. I stopped at a bench, watching joggers and dog walkers, people living lives that weren't tied to a single obsession. It hit me hard. I'd forgotten what it felt like to just be. I'd been Emily, the bakery girl, for so long that I didn't know Emily, the person. My phone stayed quiet, which hurt more than I expected. No calls from Dad, no texts from Lily, not even a worried note from Mom. Part of me hoped they'd chase me, beg me to come back, and admit they'd messed up. But the silence said they thought they could manage without me. Fine, I told myself. Let Lily handle the chaos. She wanted to be the owner? Let her deal with the university's catering contract, the festival prep, and the payroll glitches. Still, the quiet gnawed at me, a reminder of how easily they'd let me go. That afternoon, I met Jenna for lunch at a diner near her office. She slid into the booth, her eyes scanning me like I might break. "You holding up?" she asked, pushing a basket of fries my way. I shrugged, poking at my burger. "I don't know who I am without the bakery, Jen. It's like I'm floating, and not in a good way." She leaned forward, her voice firm. "You're more than Harper's Hearth, Em. You're smart, tough, and the one who made that place a success. They didn't value you, but that doesn't mean you're worthless." Her words were a lifeline, but believing them was harder than hearing them. Jenna suggested I talk to someone outside the family drama, so I called Rachel, my college mentor, again. She'd already given me solid advice about documenting my work, and I needed her perspective now. "You're free, Emily," she said over the phone, her voice steady. "For the first time in years, you get to choose what's next. But you need a plan, not just a reaction." She told me to start small, rebuild routines, explore options, and remind myself I was marketable. "You've got skills any food business would kill for," she said. "Don't let your family's mistake define you." Inspired, I spent the next day sketching out a new rhythm. I signed up for a morning yoga class, something I'd always dismissed as not for me because it cut into work hours. The stretching felt awkward, but the instructor's calm voice helped quiet my racing thoughts. I cooked an actual breakfast, eggs and toast, instead of gulping coffee on the go. I even cracked open a novel I'd bought years ago but never read. These were tiny steps, but they felt like rebellion against the grind I'd lived for so long. Still, every time I passed a bakery or smelled fresh bread, my chest ached, a reminder of what I'd lost. By the end of the week, the family's silence broke, but not how I'd hoped. Lily texted first, short and frantic. "Where's the university contract? The client's asking for changes." Then another. "Em, the festival vendor's confused about setup. What do I tell them?" I stared at the messages, my thumb hovering over the reply button. The old Emily would have jumped in, fixed everything, and saved the day. But that Emily was gone. I didn't respond. Let Lily figure it out, I told myself, though a pang of guilt tugged at me. This was her mess now. Dad's call came a day later, his voice tight with urgency. "Emily, this is ridiculous. The university's threatening to cancel their order. We need you back." No apology, no acknowledgement of the betrayal, just demands. I closed my eyes, steadying myself. "Lily's the owner," I said, my tone flat. "She can handle it." He sputtered, "This is our family's legacy, your grandfather's dream." "You gave that legacy to Lily," I cut in, my voice sharp. "I'm done cleaning up your messes." I hung up before he could argue, my heart racing but my resolve firm. Mom tried next, her voicemail soft and pleading. "Emily, we're worried about you. This isn't like you walking away from the business. We're family, we can fix this." The guilt in her voice almost pulled me in, but I deleted the message. Family didn't hide deals that shattered trust. I wasn't ready to play nice, not yet. The real turning point came on Friday, when my personal phone rang with an unexpected name. Clara Thompson, the catering director for the university, our biggest client. Her account made up a quarter of our annual revenue, and I'd spent years building that relationship, remembering her favorite pastries and her son's college graduation. "Emily," she said, her tone brisk but warm, "what's going on at Harper's Hearth?" "I've been dealing with Lily, but she's all over the place. Our order is a mess, and I need someone who knows what they're doing." I hesitated, the pull of responsibility strong. "I'm on leave, Clara," I said carefully. "Lily's your point person now." She sighed, a sound I knew meant frustration. "You've been my go-to for 3 years. I don't trust this with anyone else. If you're not running things, I'm rethinking our contract." Her words stopped me cold. The university was a cornerstone client, and losing them would gut the bakery. A small, vindictive part of me wanted to let it happen, to prove they needed me. But another part, the one that still loved Harper's hearth, wavered. "I'm not in charge anymore," I said, choosing my words. "If you're not confident with the current setup, you might want to explore other vendors." There was a pause, then Clara's voice softened. "If you land somewhere else, Emily, give me a call. My loyalty to you, not the name on the sign." I hung up, her words echoing. Loyalty to me, not Harper's hearth. For the first time, I saw a glimmer of a future beyond my family's shadow. That night, I journaled. Something Rachel suggested to process the chaos. I wrote about the bakery, the betrayal, but also about Clara's call, about the yoga class, about the park's leaves. I wrote about the anger, still hot, but also a growing sense of possibility. I wasn't just the girl who'd lost everything. I was the woman who'd built something worth wanting. That realization, fragile as it was, kept me going. A few days later, Dad called again, this time in full panic mode. "Emily, Clara Thompson's pulling the university contract. That's millions in revenue. You need to fix this." His desperation was almost satisfying, a crack in his usual control. "I told you," I said, calm but firm. "Lily's the owner. Let her deal with it." "This isn't a game," he shouted. "This is our livelihood." "You chose Lily," I replied, my voice steady. "Live with it." I ended the call, my hands trembling but my heart oddly light. They were feeling the weight of their decision, and I wasn't rushing to save them. That evening, I met Alex, my lawyer friend, for coffee to discuss my options. "Legally, they didn't break any laws," he said, flipping through the ownership papers. "But morally? They screwed you. You could push for severance, maybe a stake in the business for your contributions, or you could walk away and start fresh." "I don't know who I am without the bakery," I admitted, stirring my latte. He smiled, kind but direct. "Maybe it's time to find out. You're not starting from zero, Em. You're a powerhouse." His words stuck with me as I drove home, the city lights blurring past. I wasn't ready to forgive, but I was ready to build something new, something mine. The bakery had been my life, but it didn't have to be my future. Clara's call, Rachel's advice, even the quiet moments in the park, they were pieces of a puzzle I was just starting to solve. I didn't have all the answers, but for the first time in years, I had space to ask the questions. Pause for narration. That's where I was, folks, teetering between loss and possibility, learning to stand without the crutch of Harper's hearth. The fight's not over, and the next steps are going to shake things up. Pause. Have you ever had to rebuild after a betrayal? Drop your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next part, where the stakes get higher. Hey, folks, it's Emily Harper, back with the next chapter of my roller coaster life. Last time, I was finding my footing after walking away from Harper's Hearth, our family bakery in Richmond, Virginia, reeling from my parents' secret deal to give 70% of it to my sister, Lily. I'd started carving out a new routine, ignoring their frantic calls for help, and got a boost when a big client, Clara, made it clear I was the one they trusted, not the bakery. Now things are heating up, and I'm facing a choice that could change everything. Picture me standing at a crossroads, heart pounding, ready to fight for what I'm worth. Grab a seat because this part's packed with tension, and it's gonna pull you right in. A week after I hung up on Dad's desperate plea to save the university contract, I was starting to feel like I could breathe again. My days had a new rhythm, yoga at sunrise, real meals instead of granola bars, and walks where I'd stop to watch squirrels chase each other up trees. It was strange, this freedom, like learning to walk after years in a sprint. But every step away from Harper's Hearth made the betrayal sting a little less. I wasn't whole yet, but I was piecing myself together, bit by bit, with help from friends like Jenna and advice from my mentor, Rachel. Clara's call, saying her loyalty was to me, not the bakery, was a spark that kept me going. I was valuable, even if my family hadn't seen it. Then, one evening, my doorbell rang, shattering the quiet. I peered through the peephole and saw Dad, Michael Harper, standing there, his usually crisp button-down rumpled, his shoulders sagging like he'd aged a decade. My stomach twisted, but I wasn't running from this. I opened the door, stepping aside without a word. He barged in, pacing my small living room like a trapped bear. "Emily, do you have any idea what you're doing to us?" he said, his voice rough. "Clara's pulling the university deal. The festival vendors threatening to back out. We're drowning." I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, keeping my face neutral. "Sounds like a leadership issue," I said, my voice calm but pointed. "Good thing Lily's in charge." His eyes flashed, the same look he gave vendors who missed deliveries. "This isn't funny. We're losing everything your great-grandfather built." I almost laughed, the irony too rich. "You mean what I built? I tripled our sales, Dad. I made those deals, and you gave it all to Lily." He stopped pacing, running a hand through his thinning hair. "I didn't come to fight," he said, his tone shifting, softer, like he was negotiating a contract. "I came with a solution." I raised an eyebrow, waiting. "Director of Operations," he said, as if unveiling a prize. "Full control over production, supply chain, everything you love. Double your current salary, your own office." For a second I was stunned, not by the offer but by how little he understood me. "Let me get this straight," I said, stepping forward. "You want me to come back, do the same job I've been killing myself for, while Lily keeps 70% of the business? That's your fix?" He blinked, like he hadn't expected pushback. "It's a promotion, Emily. A chance to shine." "Shine?" My voice rose sharp. "I've been shining for 10 years, Dad. I built those systems, those relationships. And you're offering me a fancier title to keep working under the sister you handed my dream to?" He sighed, sitting heavily on my couch. "What do you want, then?" The question hung between us, and for the first time I felt the power shift. I didn't hesitate. 40% ownership, I said, my voice steady. A board seat, and a cap on my hours. No more 70-hour weeks. His eyes widened, his mouth opening, then closing. "That's absurd," he finally said. "Lily has 70%. We can't just rearrange the shares." "Then figure it out," I said, crossing my arms, "or I walk for good." I didn't tell him about the call I'd had that morning with Lauren Carter, owner of Carter's Confections, a fast-growing bakery chain in Charlottesville. Rachel had connected us, and Lauren was eager to meet, hinting at a senior role with profit sharing. It wasn't a firm offer yet, but it was a lifeline, proof I had options. Dad didn't need to know that, but I let the confidence of it fuel my words. "Lauren Carter called me today," I said, stretching the truth. "She's offering a director role, normal hours, and a stake in profits. Clara Thompson said she'd follow me wherever I go. How many other clients would do the same?" His face paled, the weight of my words sinking in. Losing the university was bad. Losing more clients could cripple Harper's hearth. "You wouldn't go to Carter's," he said, almost a whisper. "They're our rivals." "I haven't said yes," I replied, holding his gaze. "But I'm done being undervalued. 40%, board seat, normal hours, that's my price." He stared at me, like he was seeing me for the first time. Not as his daughter, but as someone who could break him. "I need to talk to your mother and Lily," he said, standing. "How long do I have?" 2 days, I said, picking a deadline that felt firm. "I need an answer by Wednesday night." He nodded, moving toward the door, then paused. "You've changed, Emily." I didn't respond, just watched him leave, my heart thumping. I'd never spoken to him like that. As an equal, not a kid begging for approval. It was terrifying, but it felt right, like I was finally claiming my space. After he left, I sank onto the couch, adrenaline fading into a shaky calm. Jenna called, sensing my mood through some best friend telepathy. "You okay?" she asked. I told her about Dad's visit, my demand, and the call with Lauren. "You're a badass, Em," she said, her voice warm. "You're not just fighting for the bakery, you're fighting for you." Her words steadied me, but doubt crept in. What if they said no? What if I had to start over? Leave the legacy I still loved, despite everything? The next morning, I drove to Charlottesville to meet Lauren Carter, needing to know if my backup plan was real. Her bakery was sleek and modern, with glass cases full of macarons and tarts. Lauren, a sharp woman in her 40s, greeted me with a firm handshake. "Rachel speaks highly of you," she said, leading me to her office. "I've followed Harper's Hearth's growth. That's your doing, isn't it?" I nodded, surprised by the recognition. "Mostly," I said, keeping it modest. She laid out her vision. "Expanding Carter's confections across Virginia, maybe beyond. I need someone who can run operations, build systems, and handle clients," she said. "Your track record's impressive. I'm offering the director of operations a 10% profit share, 40-hour weeks, and 4 weeks vacation." The offer was better than I'd dared hope, a clean break from family drama. "Take a couple of days," she said, handing me a folder. "Let me know by Friday." I thanked her, my mind racing as I drove back to Richmond. Carter's was tempting, but Harper's Hearth was still in my blood, tangled with love and pain. That afternoon, Mom showed up at my apartment, a casserole dish in hand, her eyes red-rimmed. "Just checking on you," she said, setting it on my counter. I saw through the excuse but let her in, bracing for the guilt trip. "Your father's a wreck," she said, slicing the casserole like it was therapy. "He's worried about the business but mostly about losing you." I snorted, leaning against the fridge. "He's worried about losing clients, Mom, not me." She sighed, her hands stilling. "It's more than that, Emily. We love you, both of you. We made a mistake, thinking Lily could lead while you ran things." Her admission caught me off guard, a crack in the wall I'd built. "A mistake?" I said, my voice low. "You lied to me for 6 months. You let me think I was building my future." She looked down, her voice barely audible. "I told him it was wrong, keeping you in the dark, but he thought it'd be easier this way." "Easier for whom?" I asked, anger flaring. "For you? For Lily? Because it sure wasn't easier for me." She reached for my hand, but I stepped back. "What about Lily? Did she think it was okay to take what I earned?" Mom hesitated. "She didn't want to hurt you. Your father convinced her it was best, that you were too vital to operations to own." I shook my head, the pieces falling into place. Lily hadn't fought for it. She'd just gone along like always. It didn't make it hurt less, but it shifted something in me. "My terms haven't changed," I said, meeting her eyes. 40%, board seat, normal hours." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "He's talking to our lawyer, Harold. They're trying to find a way." Harold Jenkins, our family's attorney for years, meant Dad was serious. Mom hugged me before leaving, and this time I let her, though I didn't hug back. The possibility they might meet my demands felt strange, almost scarier than their betrayal. What if I got what I wanted? Could I trust them again? The next day was quiet. No calls from Dad or Lily, just me and my thoughts. I reviewed Lauren's offer, jotting down questions about her expansion plans, her team, and her vision. If Harper's Hearth wouldn't budge, I needed to be ready to jump. I also met Rachel for coffee, updating her on everything. "You're playing this smart," she said, sipping her espresso. "You're not begging, you're demanding what you deserve. Whatever happens, you're in control now." Her confidence bolstered mine, a reminder I wasn't alone in this fight. Wednesday evening, right on cue, my phone lit up with Dad's name. My pulse spiked, but I answered, keeping my voice even. "Emily," he said, formal, like we were in a boardroom. "We want to meet tomorrow to discuss your terms. Neutral ground, Riverside Cafe, noon. Me, your mother, Lily, and Harold." I exhaled, steadying myself. "I'll be there," I said, hanging up before he could add anything. Tomorrow would change everything one way or another. That night I prepared like I would for a big client pitch. I reviewed my contributions to Harper's Hearth, my leverage with Clara, and Lauren's offer as a fallback. I practiced my arguments, anticipating Dad's pushback, Mom's pleas, and Lily's excuses. This wasn't just about ownership. It was about rewriting how my family saw me. For the first time, I felt ready to fight not just for the bakery but for myself. Pause for narration. That's where I stood, folks, on the brink of a showdown that could reshape my future. The stakes are high, and the next move's going to be a game changer. Pause. Have you ever had to demand your worth from someone you love? Share your stories, and I'll catch you in the next part, where it all comes to a head. Hey folks, it's Emily Harper, diving back into the fire. Last time I was gearing up for a make-or-break meeting with my family, ready to fight for my worth after they handed 70% of Harper's Hearth, our Richmond bakery chain, to my sister Lily behind my back. I'd laid out my terms, 40% ownership, a board seat, and sane working hours, and I'd gotten a taste of freedom with an offer from a rival, Carter's Confections. Now picture me walking into a cafe, heart-hammering, about to face my parents and sister across a table that feels more like a battlefield. This part's all about standing tall, hashing it out, and finding a path forward that's mine. Get comfy because this one's intense, and it's going to tug at your heartstrings. The morning of the meeting, I woke with a knot in my stomach, the kind you get before a big pitch. I'd spent the night prepping like I was heading into a client deal, rehearsing my arguments, anticipating Dad's hardball tactics, Mom's emotional pleas, and Lily's deflections. Riverside Cafe, our neutral ground, was a cozy spot by the James River, all exposed brick and coffee aroma. But today it felt like a courtroom. I dressed deliberately, in a tailored blazer and slacks, my hair pulled back, professional but not cold. This wasn't just about Harper's Hearth. It was about rewriting my place in my family, proving I wasn't just the worker bee they'd taken for granted. I arrived at noon sharp, spotting them in a corner booth. Dad, Michael, his face etched with stress. Mom, Susan, clutching a napkin like a lifeline. Lily, her eyes downcast, fingers fidgeting with her coffee cup. And Harold Jenkins, our family lawyer, his briefcase open with papers stacked neatly. Mom stood to hug me, but I offered a handshake, keeping it businesslike. Her face fell, but I wasn't here for family therapy, not yet. Dad nodded stiffly, Lily gave a small wave, and Harold offered a neutral smile. "Thanks for coming, Emily," Dad said, his voice formal, like he was addressing a board. "Let's get to it." I sat, my folder of notes in front of me, my heart pounding but my face calm. "You know my terms," I said, cutting to the chase. 40% ownership, a board seat, and a 45-hour workweek max. I'm not here to haggle over crumbs. Dad's jaw tightened, but before he could speak, Lily leaned forward, her voice soft. "Emily, I owe you an apology. I didn't mean to hurt you. I thought I was helping the business, but I see now how much I took from you." Her words caught me off guard, a crack in my armor. I'd expected excuses, not this. "You signed the papers, Lily," I said, my tone even but sharp. "You knew what it meant." She nodded, her eyes glistening. "I did, and I'm sorry. Dad made it sound like you were too crucial to operations to own, that this was the best way to keep you doing what you love. I was wrong to believe him." I glanced at Dad, who looked away, his silence louder than any defense. Mom reached across the table, stopping short when I didn't move. "We messed up, Emily," she said, her voice trembling. "We thought Lily's creativity would balance your skills, but we should have talked to you. We didn't realize how much it had hurt." Her admission stung, not because it was new, but because it was real. They saw their mistake. But was it enough? Dad cleared his throat, taking control. "We've reviewed your terms," he said, sliding a document toward me. "We're offering 25% ownership, a board seat, and a 50-hour workweek. You'd report to Lily, but with significant autonomy." I scanned the paper, my pulse quickening. It was a step, but not enough. 25%? I said, pushing it back. "I've given 10 years, tripled revenue, and secured our biggest clients. I'm not coming back to be Lily's subordinate with a slightly better deal." Harold adjusted his glasses, stepping in. "Emily, redistributing shares is complex. Lily's at 70%, your parents at 30%. A 40% transfer would require significant restructuring. Then restructure, I said, leaning forward. I know my value. Clara Thompson's ready to pull the university contract because Lily can't handle it. I've got an offer from Carter's Confections. Director role, profit share, normal hours. I don't need Harper's Hearth, but you need me. Dad's face hardened, but I saw the flicker of fear in his eyes. You'd go to Carter's? He asked, voice low. Betray your family's legacy? You betrayed me first, I shot back, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. You gave my future to Lily, who can't even find the vendor contracts. I'm not asking for charity, I'm asking for what I've earned. Lily spoke up, surprising everyone. I'll give her 35% from my share, she said, her voice firm. I never wanted to be the majority owner, I just wanted to contribute, not run the show. My jaw dropped, and even Dad looked stunned. Lily, he started, but she cut him off. I'm drowning, Dad. I can't do what Emily does. Her systems and her client relationships, that's what keeps us afloat. I'm better at branding, not operations. I stared at her, processing. This wasn't the Lily I'd resented, the one who'd floated through life while I worked. She was admitting her limits, something I'd never seen. You'd give up 35%? I asked, skeptical. She nodded, meeting my eyes. You deserve it, Em. I didn't see it before, but I do now. Mom's eyes welled up, and Dad shifted uncomfortably, like he was losing control of his own script. Harold scribbled notes, breaking the tension. We could draft an agreement. 35% to Emily from Lily's share, bringing her to 35%, Lily to 35%, and your parents at 30%. Board seat for Emily, equal decision-making power, 45-hour workweek cap for all executives, and 3 weeks vacation mandatory. I leaned back, considering. It was close to my terms, better than I'd expected, but trust was still a raw wound. Could I work with them after everything? Let's talk specifics, I said, keeping my voice steady. For the next hour, we hammered out details. Dad pushed for a 20% stake, arguing stability, but I held firm, pointing to Clara's threat and Lauren Carter's offer. Lily backed me, her voice stronger each time she spoke, like she was shedding her own guilt. Mom mostly listened, her eyes darting between us, hopeful but scared. Harold outlined a board structure where major decisions needed 2 of the 3 owners' votes, ensuring I'd have real power, not just a title. As we wrapped up, Lily asked to speak privately. We stepped onto the cafe's riverside patio, the water glinting under the midday sun. I never wanted to take your place, Em, she said, her voice raw. Dad told me you were too good at operations to own, that I'd be helping you by taking the lead. I bought it because I always felt like the screw-up next to you, the perfect daughter. I blinked, stunned. Me? Perfect? You were the one Dad praised for every Instagram post, Lily. I was just a grunt. She laughed, a sad sound. He always talked about you, how you were the backbone, how you'd make the bakery legendary. I thought owning it would prove I could measure up. We stood there, the river rushing past, rewriting years of misunderstanding. We never talked, did we? I said, my throat tight. Not really, she agreed. I want to fix that. I'm not cut out to run this alone, but I think we could be good together if you're willing. It wasn't forgiveness, not fully. But it was a start, a bridge I hadn't expected. Back at the table, we reviewed Harold's draft. I'd get 35% ownership, a board seat, equal say, and a 45-hour cap. The agreement included a cultural shift, no more endless work weeks, a nod to the balance I craved. We signed a letter of intent, a temporary step until the legal paperwork was finalized. Will you come back tomorrow? Dad asked as we stood to leave, his voice softer. Clara's still on the edge. I shook my head. Not yet. I'm still on vacation, and I need to think about Carter's offer. I'll be available for emergencies by phone starting next week. Mom hugged me, and this time I let it linger, though my heart was still guarded. As we parted outside the cafe, Lily touched my arm. I'm glad you fought for this, she said. I nodded, unsure how to respond. Driving home, I felt lighter, not free, but unburdened, like I'd reclaimed a piece of myself. The fight wasn't over, but I'd won a battle, and it felt good. That evening, I called Lauren Carter to thank her for her offer but say I was leaning toward staying with Harper's Hearth. I get it, she said, her voice warm. Family's complicated. My door's open if you change your mind. I hung up, grateful for the safety net, and poured a glass of wine sitting on my balcony as the city twinkled below. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't running from the pain or toward a fight. I was just sitting, imagining a future where I could have the bakery and a life. Pause for narration. That's where I landed, folks, with a deal on the table and a chance to rebuild, not just the business, but my family. The road's still rocky, but I'm walking it. Pause. Have you ever had to renegotiate your place with the people who hurt you? Tell me your stories, and I'll see you in the next part, where things start to take shape. Hey there, folks, it's Emily Harper, back with the next piece of my journey. Last time, I walked away from a tense showdown at Riverside Cafe, having fought tooth and nail for my place at Harper's Hearth, our family bakery chain in Richmond, Virginia. I'd secured 35% ownership, a board seat, and a promise of no more soul-crushing work weeks, all after my parents handed 70% to my sister Lily, without a word to me. Now I'm stepping back into the bakery, not as the girl who gave up everything for it, but as a woman ready to build something new for myself and the business. Picture me taking a deep breath, surrounded by the scent of warm bread, wondering if I can trust this fresh start. This party's about picking up the pieces, finding my footing, and learning to live again. Grab a coffee because this one's rich with feeling, and it's going to pull you in. After the cafe meeting, I needed space to process, so I did something I hadn't in years. I took a real break. I drove to a small cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains, just me, a journal, and the quiet of pine trees. For a week I hiked trails, watched sunsets, and let my mind wander without the buzz of deadlines. I'd sit by a creek scribbling thoughts about the betrayal, the fight, but also about what I wanted next. The mountains felt like a reset, a place to shed the weight of a decade spent chasing someone else's promise. I came back to Richmond feeling lighter, not fixed, but ready to step into the new role I'd carved out. That first morning back at Harper's Hearth, the shop felt both familiar and strange. The hum of mixers, the clink of trays, the chatter of early customers. It was home, but I wasn't the same Emily who'd left. My new office was a bright space with a view of the downtown streets, a far cry from the cluttered desk I'd used before. The staff greeted me cautiously, like they were waiting to see if I'd snap. Luis, our veteran baker, clapped me on the shoulder. "Good to have you back, boss," he said, his grin easing the tension. I smiled, grateful for the warmth, but I knew rebuilding trust, with them and myself, would take time. Lily was in the front, tweaking a display of cupcakes, her hair tied back with a colorful bandana. "Hey, Em," she said, her voice tentative, like she was testing the waters. "Ready to dive in?" I nodded, keeping my guard up but open to trying. We'd agreed on a new setup. I'd run operations, from supply chains to client deals, while Lily handled marketing and customer relations, her natural strengths. Dad was easing out, taking a mentor role with a plan to retire in a few years, leaving the daily grind to us. It was a big change, one I'd demanded, but stepping into it felt like walking a tightrope. We started with a meeting to stabilize the university contract, which Clara Thompson had nearly pulled when I quit. I'd smoothed things over with a call, assuring her I was back in charge of operations. Sitting across from Lily, I laid out the production schedule, delivery routes, and staffing needs. She listened intently, jotting notes, her usual breezy vibe replaced by focus. "I fumbled this one," she admitted, tapping her pen. "Clara kept asking for you, and I didn't know half the answers." I leaned back, choosing my words. "It's a lot to learn," I said. "But you've got a knack for the front end. Let's play that." She gave a small smile, and I felt a flicker of possibility. Not friendship yet, but a chance to work as equals. The bakery was changing too, reflecting our new vision. We'd set firm rules. No more endless shifts, regular breaks, and systems to keep things efficient without burnout. I'd rolled out a new inventory app that cut errors by 20%, freeing up time for staff to focus on quality. The team responded well, their faces less strained, their chatter livelier. One morning, Sarah, our delivery coordinator, stopped by my office. "It's different now," she said, leaning in the doorway, "like we're all in it together, not just surviving." Her words landed deep, a sign that my fight had rippled beyond me, making the place better for everyone. Outside the bakery, I was building a life I'd never had time for. I started running along the James River, the rhythm of my sneakers grounding me. I signed up for a pottery class on a whim, laughing as my first bowl collapsed into a lumpy mess. I bought a few paintings for my apartment, turning it from a crash pad into a space I loved, with a cozy rug and a shelf of books I actually read. Jenna, my best friend, noticed the shift. "You're like a person now," she teased over brunch, "not just a bakery robot." I rolled my eyes, but her words hit home. I was finding pieces of myself I'd buried under work. One evening, I met Marcus Tate, a local chef I'd crossed paths with at a food festival years ago. We'd reconnected when I reached out about a potential catering partnership, and he'd suggested dinner to catch up. Over burgers at a dive bar, he asked about my story, and I shared the highlights, not the raw wound of betrayal, but the strength I'd found fighting back. "You didn't just save the bakery," he said, his voice thoughtful. "You saved yourself. That's the real win." His words sparked something, a warmth I hadn't felt in a while, a hint of a connection I wanted to explore. Family dinners crept back into my routine, but they weren't the same. Mom was gentler, less eager to gloss over tension, like she was learning to respect my boundaries. Dad was subdued, his usual take-charge attitude softened, as if he was seeing us anew. Lily and I were navigating a new dynamic, not the easy bond of childhood, but something realer. One night, as we sliced pie in the kitchen, she spoke up. "I used to think I had to prove I was as good as you," she said, her voice quiet. "Now I just want to be good together." I paused, the knife still in my hand. "I want that too," I said, and we shared a look, not fully healed, but hopeful. A couple of months in, Lily and I pitched a bold plan to the board, a mix of my cost-saving systems and her fresh branding ideas. I'd streamlined production to boost output by 10%, while Lily's new ad campaign featuring local influencers had spiked online sales. The board ate it up, voting yes without debate. Dad sat in the back, his face unreadable, but later he caught me in the hall. "You two are outdoing me," he said, a rare softness in his voice. "I didn't give you enough credit." It wasn't a full apology, but it was enough, a nod that we were steering the ship now. The bakery's success was tangible, our numbers climbing with new clients, from a downtown hotel to a festival organizer who loved our tarts. But the bigger change was in me. I left work by 5 most days, locking my office with intention. I'd jog with Marcus, who was becoming more than a friend, his steady presence a contrast to my old chaos. I hosted a book club night at my place, laughing until midnight over bad wine and worse puns. I even started baking for fun, not work, experimenting with lavender scones just because I could. One afternoon, Clara Thompson dropped by to check on our university deliveries. She walked the floor, her sharp eyes missing nothing, then turned to me with a grin. "You've got this place singing, Emily," she said. "I knew you'd make it right." I thanked her, pride swelling, not just for the contract, but for the woman I'd become, one who chose her battles and won them. Lily and I fell into a routine, meeting over coffee to plan, but also to talk, really talk. One day, she brought a sketch for a new menu board, her excitement contagious. "What do you think?" she asked, spreading it out. I suggested tweaks for readability, and we ended up debating font colors, laughing like we hadn't in years. It was a glimpse of what we could be, not just sisters, but partners who lifted each other up. Dad's shift to advisor wasn't always smooth. He'd hover during staff meetings, dropping old-school tips that didn't fit our new vibe. I'd redirect him, firm but kind. "We're trying something different," I'd say, and he'd nod, sometimes grumbling but stepping back. One evening, he stayed late, watching me finalize a vendor deal. "You're better at this than I was," he said, his voice rough. I held on too tight. I met his eyes, seeing regret there. "We're making it work now," I said, and he nodded, a weight lifting between us. My life outside the bakery kept growing. Marcus and I went on a weekend hike, trading stories under a canopy of trees. "You're not what I expected," he said, brushing dirt off his boots. "Tough as nails, but soft too." I smiled, feeling seen in a way I hadn't before. I started volunteering at a community kitchen, teaching kids to bake, their messy joy a reminder of why I loved this work. My apartment was alive now, with a record player spinning old jazz and a dog bed for Biscuit, my new rescue pup. One night I stood in my kitchen, kneading dough for no reason other than it felt good. I thought about Emily who'd lived for Harper's hearth, who'd lost herself in the grind. She'd been broken by betrayal, but she'd also been the spark for this new me, one who fought for her worth and found joy in the small things. The bakery was thriving, my family was healing, and I was, for the first time, truly alive. Pause for narration. That's where I stood, folks, baking a new life from the crumbs of the old one. The story's not over, but I'm writing the ending I deserve. Pause. Have you ever had to rebuild yourself from the ground up? Share your stories, and I'll see you in the final part, where it all wraps up. Hey folks, it's Emily Harper, here to wrap up my story with a heart so full it might just burst. Last time I was settling into my new role as co-owner of Harper's Hearth, our Richmond bakery chain, finding my stride with my sister, Lily, and building a life beyond the ovens. After my parents handed 70% of the business to her behind my back, I fought my way to 35% ownership and a seat at the table, proving I was more than the workhorse they'd overlooked. Now, picture me standing in a bustling shop, surrounded by laughter and the scent of fresh pastries, knowing I've not just survived but thrived. This is the final chapter, where it all comes together, and let me tell you, it's as sweet as our best cinnamon rolls. Grab a seat because this one's a celebration, and it's going to leave you smiling. A few months after I returned to Harper's Hearth, the bakery was humming like never before. Our new structure, with me running operations and Lily steering the brand, had turned the place into a well-oiled machine, but one with soul. We'd landed contracts with 2 more hotels and a string of local cafes, our scones and tarts becoming Richmond staples. My systems kept production tight, boosting profits without exhausting our team. Lily's marketing, from vibrant social media to pop-up events, had us trending beyond the city, with food bloggers calling us a must-visit. The numbers told one story: growth up 25% in a year, but the real magic was in the shop. Bakers joking as they kneaded, customers lingering over coffee, a warmth that hadn't been there before. Lily and I had found our groove, not just as co-owners, but as sisters rediscovering each other. One morning, we sat in my office, sipping coffee and planning a holiday menu. She sketched ideas for peppermint mochas and gingerbread cupcakes, her enthusiasm pulling me in. "What if we add a savory twist?" I suggested, thinking of our growing lunch crowd. "Like a rosemary focaccia wreath?" Her eyes lit up, and we brainstormed until we were laughing over a sketch that looked more like a UFO than a loaf. Moments like that, small but real, were stitching us back together, not to our childhood bond, but to something stronger, built on respect. Clara Thompson, our university client, became a regular fixture, her visits more than just contract check-ins. One afternoon she pulled me aside during a delivery inspection. "You and Lily are killing it," she said, her clipboard tucked under her arm. "I've been in this game a long time, Emily, and what you've done here, it's special." I thanked her, my chest tight with pride. Clara's trust had been a lifeline when I walked away, and now her praise felt like a milestone, proof I'd rebuilt not just the bakery but my legacy. Dad, Michael, was easing into his advisory role, though not without stumbles. He'd drop by with tips on old recipes or supplier tricks, sometimes forgetting he wasn't in charge. I'd listen, then pivot. "We're trying a new approach," I'd say, and he'd back off, his gruff nod a sign he was learning. One evening, as we closed the shop, he lingered by the counter, watching me tally receipts. "You've made this place yours," he said, his voice low. "I held on too long and didn't see what you could do." It was the closest he'd come to saying sorry, and it landed deep. "We're making it ours," I corrected, glancing at Lily across the room. He followed my gaze, a rare smile breaking through. "Yeah, you are." Mom, Susan, was blossoming too, less anxious about keeping the peace. At Sunday dinners, she'd share stories of her volunteer work at a local shelter, her face glowing with purpose. She'd stopped pushing for perfect family moments, letting us find our way. One night, as we cleared plates, she hugged me tight. "I'm proud of you, Emily," she whispered, "not just for the bakery, but for standing up for yourself." I hugged her back, no hesitation, feeling the rift between us close, not gone, but healed enough to move forward. My personal life was a whole new world. Marcus Tate, the chef I'd connected with, was now a steady presence, his calm balancing my fire. We'd spend weekends exploring Richmond's food scene, debating burger joints or sharing plates at new bistros. One evening, over rooftop drinks, he raised his glass. "To you, Emily Harper," he said, his eyes warm, "for building something real, in here and out there." I clinked my glass, blushing but bold. "To us," I said, and he grinned, a promise of more to come. Marcus saw me, not just the bakery boss, but the woman who loved jazz, bad puns, and quiet mornings with her rescue pup, Biscuit. Biscuit, by the way, was my new sidekick, a scrappy terrier mix who'd trail me around my apartment, tail wagging like a metronome. I'd take him on runs by the river, his joyful bounds reminding me to slow down, to savor the breeze and the skyline. My apartment was a home now, with mismatched mugs, a record player spinning Ella Fitzgerald, and a balcony where I'd sip tea and watch the city wake. I'd joined a photography club, snapping shots of street markets and sunsets, finding beauty in the everyday. Jenna, my best friend, called it my glow-up, but to me it was freedom, a life I'd earned. The bakery's big moment came one crisp morning when Lily and I unveiled a 5-year expansion plan to the board. I'd crunched the numbers, mapping out new locations in Norfolk and Raleigh, with scalable systems to keep quality high. Lily pitched a national branding strategy, with partnerships and a potential cookbook deal. We stood side by side, fielding questions with ease, her vision sparking off my pragmatism. The board's approval was unanimous, their applause echoing in the room. Dad, in the back, caught my eye, his expression a mix of wonder and respect, like he was seeing us anew. Later, over celebratory pastries, Lily nudged me. "We did that," she said, her voice thick, "together." I nodded, my throat tight. "Yeah, we did." That night I hosted a small gathering at the bakery to mark the milestone. Staff, a few clients, and family filled the shop, laughing over cupcakes and sparkling cider. Clara raised a toast, calling us Richmond's pride. Marcus stood by me, his hand brushing mine, a quiet anchor. Mom and Dad mingled, their smiles genuine, no trace of the tension that had once choked us. Lily pulled me into a hug, her whisper fierce. "I'm glad you didn't give up on us." I hugged her back, no walls left. "Me too," I said, and meant it. A few weeks later, I was prepping for a quiet evening when Dad called, asking me to swing by the shop. I found him and Lily in the kitchen, a single cupcake on the counter, a candle flickering. "What's this?" I asked, confused. "An anniversary," Dad said, his voice gruff. "1 year since you came back, you've made this place better than I ever could." Lily lit the candle, her eyes shining. "To you, Em, for fighting for what's yours." I blew out the candle, my chest full, not with pain, but with gratitude. "To all of us," I said, and we shared the cupcake, the sweetness a perfect note. Reflecting on it all, I see the girl who poured her life into Harper's hearth, thinking it was her only worth. The betrayal broke her, but it also woke her up. I fought not just for ownership, but for myself, for a life where work is joy, not chains. Lily and I aren't just sisters now. We're partners, building a legacy together. My parents aren't perfect, but they're learning, and so am I. Marcus and Biscuit, my friends, are the family I choose, the ones who see me whole. Harper's hearth is thriving, but it's no longer my everything. It's part of a bigger, richer story, one I'm writing every day. So, what's the takeaway? Knowing your worth isn't selfish, it's survival. Standing up, even to those you love, can lead to something better than you imagined. I'm living proof, standing in a bakery that's mine, in a life that's fuller than I ever dreamed. What would you have done in my shoes? Would you have walked away or fought like hell for your place? I'd love to hear your stories, because if I've learned anything, it's that we're all baking our own paths, one brave step at a time. Pause for narration. That's my story, folks. From betrayal to triumph, from ashes to a life I love. Thanks for coming along. Pause. What's your fight been? Share it, and keep shining, because your worth is worth fighting for.